like that. Okay, John, so this is where we left off last week, right? John 20, verse 30. We talked about it in our overtime. Is that fair to call it overtime?
No.
All right. I have to do one more thing because Mike can't stay, but he wanted to make sure that he got to watch it later. But that requires that the computer is actually working. So let me double check and make sure it's working. All right. I can see myself talking. I can see, yes, okay. I did not, it looks like I adjusted this incorrect. Let me make a little adjustment. Hold on. Let's try that. All right. Because last week it worked, but you couldn't hear any of your questions, which was no good. Yeah, which is, you don't mind, but those who were watching, I'm not going to repeat your question. Okay. So, what did we say? What did we leave off? We should start with prayer, actually. Heavenly Father, we ask that you would guide our study, that in all things that we read and see by way of the evangelist John, that you would guide us into the truth of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Amen. All right, so this is the end of the gospel, kind of. But it does sound like an end, doesn't it? Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, which also, Hebrew word for Christ? We've been doing it every class. Every Messiah, which also means?
Anointed one.
Anointed one. Gabe, you already graduated. You don't... All right. We drilled this at home, we drilled it in class, and now you just clam up. Oh, well. Okay, if you didn't catch it, Christ, Christos in Greek, same word in Hebrew, Messiah, Messiah, which both of them means anointed one. Who gets anointed? Prophets get anointed. Kings, we heard about Samuel anointing Saul, right? And priests get anointed too. What'd you say? Yeah, Saul. So he's the Messiah. He's the anointed one. He's the Christ, which is another way of saying he's probably also the king, right? Yeah. And the prophet, and the priest, and the high priest, yeah. The Son of God, and that by believing you may have, here's the key, life in his name. What kind of life? Yeah, and it's life. Now and forever. Right. It's all life. Right. I think one of a lament or maybe even a rant is that so much of what at least I grew up hearing in church was always about what's coming. Future. Everything's in the future. Heaven is my home, because I'm but a stranger here, right? This is a foretaste of the feast to come, but it's not the feast to come, which, by the way, isn't in the Bible, and I don't even think it's true. Is it the Lord's feast? Is it the Lord's Supper or not? It's different qualitatively how you receive it, right? We say we're gathered with saints and angels in the whole host of heaven, don't we? And yet, it doesn't look that way, but that doesn't mean it isn't that way. This is the problem with reality. Were we talking about this? We have talked about this. I got an argument with the teachers about this too. Pleasant argument, not an unpleasant one. Because apparently there's some internal conflict, not amongst the teachers, but between the teacher and spouse, about what is real and what is true, and what's the distinction between reality and truth. Right? Now, reality basically is a matter of perception. That's how it's usually understood, right? Yeah, exactly. What you can touch, taste, see. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true, because sometimes your eyes deceive you, don't they? Right? Like how many gunmen were on the hill?
A whole bunch.
Depends on which angle you look at it. Well, you see this with any time there's, especially video evidence or film evidence in that case. But even like how many times did you hear? How many gunshots did you hear? And you'll talk to 3 witnesses and you'll get 5 answers, right? Right. So perception is does it mean that you didn't hear gunshots? Yeah, no, it doesn't mean that at all. Does it mean there were really, truthfully, 3 or 2 or whatever? Who knows, right? Yeah. We try to get to the point where we have beyond a shadow of doubt, But we can't always get there, can we? So that's the problem with reality. Truth, on the other hand, is absolute because truth is Jesus. That's the only truth, actually. Everything else, who knows? We talk about eternal truths. Well, the only eternal truth is Jesus and whatever he said. Okay? So that's the distinction as Christians, anyway, that we would make. And reality is still perception. Sometimes reality corresponds to truth, right? You really received Christ's body and blood in your mouth today, even though, as far as your taste buds go and your eyes went, and the only thing that confirmed the true reality of what happened today is what you heard in your ears. Yeah, so that's key. Yeah, come on in. It's fine. You're not interrupting. Or maybe, but not in a bad way. It's Bible class. I don't care. I almost wish somebody interrupted me in church and say, "Hey, Pastor, you're on the wrong service." Like, oh. Yeah, but you're all...
It was interesting how many people just
jump right back.
You
didn't skip anything. I think, best I can figure, I put the ribbon in the wrong spot. And then also, I talked about Service 3's Beloved in the Lord on the Wednesday night Bible study because it quotes Hebrews. So maybe that's what happened. Who knows? Maybe I'm just anxious to move away from Service 1 and go to Service 3. My subconscious was at work. We're not. I think for the summer we'll do something even different yet. Yeah, not that exciting actually. Just 4, Service 4, because it's kind of easy and it's short-ish.
It's the mark of there's less singing.
There's less singing, yeah.
It's the mark
Okay. So especially summer because we expect, people traveling, whatever. Now, we got to talk about this. Now, Jesus did many other signs. What's a sign according to John? Give me some of the signs. Yeah, miracles, specific miracles, right? What was the first sign? He even called it a sign. The wedding at Cana, right, back in chapter 2, right? Feeding the 5,000 was another sign. That was chapter 6. Right, that was chapter 8, probably. I think it was 8. Yeah. There's argument about how many there are and whether you can number them and if it's a nice Bible number like 6 or 7, which would be so sweet, right? Because if there's 6, then the 7th sign would be the death and resurrection of Jesus, yeah. If there's 7 before that. So actually people do divide the book of John into 2 halves. I don't know if we talked about this when we started the book way back when. Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You touched on it multiple times.
Did I? Book of the, it doesn't matter, I'm going to do it again, signs. So that's chapter 1 through 12. And then they usually call it the book of glory? I think glory, yeah. And that's chapter 13 through 20. And then 21 would be what?
Apology.
I'm calling it the epilogue.
That's how you say that word.
Epilogue, yeah, epilogue 21. All right. Because what's an epilogue? It's words that come after. Yeah. It's not necessarily a summary. Epilogues are interesting. The only analogy that came to mind right away that's clearly an epilogue is the end of Return of the King, the Tolkien book. If you watch the movie, it's obvious that it's an epilogue. Because they go off into the sunset, right? And you're like, the end. And then they're like, no, there's more. We got another 45 minutes of the movie on the extended version. 10 minutes? I can exaggerate. Give me a break. All right, it's 10 more minutes. But it does the same thing in the book. Then you go back to Hobbiton, and actually in the book it's even more extensive, right? They go back to Hobbiton, and there's, what's his name, causing a problem? Saruman. He's causing problems. Yeah, steampunk. He goes back to Hobbiton, he turns it into an industrial city, which is like perfect, because Tolkien was very much not in favor of cities. I'm not either, by the way. Villages are okay, but as soon as you start having sky rises and there's bellowing pipes of nonsense, and it's like, no, I lived in Chicago for 9 months, or not even 9 months, 3 months. That was long enough, because you can't even breathe. It's so people just think, oh, that's normal. I'm like, no, it's not normal. You can't smell cows. It's not normal. That's only when the wind shifts. No, and same with light pollution. I mean, all the pollution and all of that. And It's good to be with other people, but then there's a limit to that, I think, where it becomes unnatural. So that's the end of Return of the King, which does just kind of seem like, okay, but wait, there's some other parts of the story that we probably should just tidy up before we really close the book. So you don't have too many questions yet. So that's kind of what's going to happen here, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Many other signs, but the book of signs, chapters 1 through 12, all right, and then this starts the Passion, basically, the book of glory. Remember, the glory of God is the cross of Christ in John's Gospel.
His glory is his humiliation.
Yeah, his glory is in his humiliation. It's in the moment of darkness is the glory of God, which is, as it is with God often, he hides himself under the opposite. So there's darkness, and yet that's the glory moment. That makes sense? It's opposite. All right. In the presence of the disciples, right? So now why in the presence of the disciples?
So that they could account.
Yeah, so they could give an account of those things, right? Because they saw them, right? They witnessed them, which are not written in this book, all right? So there's many more things, but we'll get there. But these are written, all right? So the book of signs, if you like, and the book of glory, all of this is written that you may believe. So it's for the sake of faith, all right? That Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the Redeemer, the Son of God. So we have multiple titles going on, and that by believing you would have life in his name, which is, I think this is genius, because this is not how people approach the Bible. John is trying to recenter, refocus you so that you understand the Bible the way that it's intended to be given by the Spirit, which is for the sake of faith, faith leading to life. That's what it's for. It's not an instruction book. John's not even a particularly good instruction book anyway, as far as how to live your life. I mean, like we talked about, we can look at wisdom literature for that. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Lamentations even, right? Psalms. So it's not an instruction book. How else do people use the Bible? It's like a myth or a tale, right?
History.
Well, it is history. Right. If it's not history, then it's also not valuable to us, because if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then our faith is in vain, right? So it is history. There is historical record. But we've talked about this at length through John. John's probably not as careful about history in the way that we are in terms of science. Everything has to be written in linear order. That's how we approach history, right? He's not standing in a divine courtroom and having to make an account in a way that if it's not told perfectly, it's all disqualified.
In the context of set in an order of things, put next to other things like, for instance, the ordering of the things, of the accounts between the evangelists, and how it doesn't really matter that they line up. It doesn't matter that he doesn't have it lined up in a specific order linearly, because that doesn't really matter.
I mean, it doesn't matter. It does matter if it's true, if it actually happened. But again, here, his purpose statement, he's telling this history with this purpose in mind, that you would have faith in Jesus as the Messiah, and that by having faith, believing in him, trust, then you would have life in his name. All right, so that, to your point, Ethan, the purpose is not to give an accurate historic account. It is to tell the history in such a way that you believe, that it leads to faith. It doesn't mean it's untrue, right? Now, back to our conversation about reality versus truth, right? Well, is it possible that one evangelist saw things differently than another evangelist? Of course. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. If the details don't precisely agree, so what, right?
That would be their reality.
In a sense, it actually is their reality. I'm very cautious about this because the next step, well, if it's my reality, then it's my truth. No, you don't get to have your own truth. You can't have your own reality, right? You can imagine yourself as an aardvark. I'm perfectly okay with that. Don't make me acknowledge it, because I don't perceive you as an aardvark.
Maybe sometimes.
I must have had a dream about an aardvark or something. Because they're not around here. Where do aardvarks live?
In the Southwest.
Yeah. It needs to be a little drier. All right, good. Let's see. Is there anything else on that we should talk about? I don't think so.
We talked last week about how since it does look like an ending,
Hmm?
we talked last week and way at the beginning, how it's a bookend.
Yes.
Chapter 1.
Oh, yeah, we did talk about that last week.
They very much parallel.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Oh, no, but the end, John 1:14. How did it go? I think we looked at that, but
It was the part about life and
I think almost everybody was here last week, so.
we were.
Oh, you weren't. Okay, so we can say this. There it is. Actually, go back 1:12. But all who did receive him, who believed in his name, see, there it is, belief. He gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Right? And then, who is life, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have beheld or seen his glory, the second book. Glory as of the only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. Right? So, again, this is all that statement about faith, right? This is what's coming on. That's what's going on here. God reveals himself in Jesus Christ for the sake of faith, that you would believe in him. We talked about this morning in the new member class, but it's the same story. Like, how does God the Father want to be known by you? You know, as the Monty Python God with the big beard, not like mine, but more white. The Babylonian guy, Marduk. Oh, okay. Is that how he wants to be known?
I don't know, that's how we looked at him.
Oh, that's how he looked in Monty Python. Is that how he wants to be known? No. How does the Father want to be known?
His son.
Through his Son, that's correct. By way of his Son. You actually can't know God as Father except by the way of his Son. Because you can't actually call him Father except by way of his Son through baptism, right? Because you're adopted. Monty Python God. Let's see if we can find it. If I refer to something, I probably should give you a picture of it, right? This is dangerous. Oh, there he is. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Is that God the Father? No. But who even knows what that's going to be? There you go. He's kind of scary.
I just want to see those eyes.
Those eyes. Well, and it's Terry Gilliam, this is all like stop motion with cutouts. He uses like paper cutouts. So the eyes make weird movements too. It's very creepy. Oh, he does. Well, and that's the God. See, what's interesting about this is Python makes a lot of fun of the Christian faith. But they were raised in a Christian faith where they were made to be afraid of God. They talk about this at length, that the church they grew up in, they were terrified of God and being in his presence, going to church. So
there's the people that believe in what they think was the God of the Old Testament, or he's just angry and grumpy all the time and punching you.
yeah, kind of like Dad. Yeah. Instead, you go to Mom because she's not angry and grumpy all the time.
And then he gets all super nice.
And then he gets all nice. Yeah. Oh, Mom, you're so nice. Oh, thank you. All right, chapter 21. Enough on that. Let's read 1 to 14. Can we do that?
After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing."
Good plan.
They said to him, "We will go with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore. But the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, do you have any fish?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved therefore said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards off. When they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire in place, with fish laid out on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead.
All right. This is Gus's favorite story, right? Let's go fishing.
I was just going to say, I'm going.
Yeah, it sounds like fun, right? This should be an Easter Sunday, tradition, right? You go out early morning, go fishing with Jesus.
That's a tradition all the time.
Well, it used to be like Good Friday.
Good Friday after church.
You're a couple days ahead of the story.
Church, when I come here, we go.
Huh. I was just kind of kidding. Oh, well.
I like that one back all the way to my dad.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
The idea of
It worked for
sounds
65 years already.
Wow, that's something. Okay. So what are we doing here? Like I said, it's kind of an epilogue. I like that idea. It's not immaterial. Did a little research. There's no extant manuscripts of John's Gospel. That means manuscripts that we have that don't include chapter 21. They all have chapter 21. Even though everybody says it doesn't make any sense because we just ended the book, and why are we going to keep going? It's like, so then they get into questions. Well, the Greek's a little bit different, so maybe John didn't write it, but John's disciple did and added it on. And there's plenty of examples of this. I mean, Mark's the most notorious. The end of Mark is that one. Actually, there's many copies of Mark manuscript, old copies, that don't even have it. The ending, the long ending with the handling snakes and stuff, the fun part. So adding an epilogue on from one of your disciples, there's actually a case even within the Bible of that. Right? Actually, elsewhere too, even a book like Daniel has some of that, Old Testament book. So that's part of the argument. But since there's no copies without 21, whether John wrote it or not isn't really even the point. By the way, we have something from Luther like that in the Catechism too. We don't even know if he wrote, but we include it anyway, because people around him, after he died, said he did write it. What I'm talking about? Christian questions and their answers. Yeah, it says there's a little note in the Catechism right ahead of it, I think. It says, well, we're not really sure, but it's been in most catechisms since the beginning, so why not?
Well, what if you just said them instead of writing them?
Well, their point is, even if Luther didn't write them, this is what Luther taught. I think it's questions and answers, right? Yeah, this catechism doesn't give you the note. It must.
If the people heard them,
Hmm?
they would witness.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have record of them being said as early as 1544, I think, or something, right? So just like, no, it would have been 54, so 5 or 6 years after Luther's death. So if it was floating around and then it didn't get included in the catechism until later, that's fine. Plus, there's nothing, they're not against God's word, so what's the harm? But anyway, all right, so he revealed himself again. This is how Jesus is. He reveals himself, right? He shows himself. He reveals himself, but did they see him? No, they don't actually recognize him, right? They did not know it was Jesus, verse 4, which is kind of interesting. So you see this at the end of Luke's gospel too. Jesus reveals himself to the Emmaus disciples, but when do they recognize him? Yeah, at the breaking of the bread and the prayers, right, exactly, in Emmaus. So when do they recognize him here? We should probably scroll up. No, cast the net, da-da-da. And then they brought in the great quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved, therefore, said to Peter, "It is the Lord." So that's a nice kind of internal evidence that it's John, right, that he's writing this story, because nobody else does. So it's right there. It's with the quantity of fish, right? A miracle, another sign. Not included in the book of signs, not necessary for faith even. So why record this story, do you think? You have any ideas? What's this story about? There's kind of a similar story.
Sounds like
Say it louder so people can hear you.
sounds like the work of the Holy Ministry.
Sounds like the work of the Holy Ministry. It does sound similar to what we hear from Matthew about, I will make you fishers of men, right? Which is at the beginning when he calls them into the ministry. And here, so it does seem contemporary to that, right? Because you have, and of course, how many people are here? We have Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, the twin. We've met him before, last chapter. Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, that's 3. The sons of Zebedee, James and John. So now we're at Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, James and John. Who are the 2 others? If we go back to chapter 1, who did Jesus call? Andrew and Philip. That's correct. I like Andrew and Philip. We can go with that.
Because they coincide with 2 others.
Well, and then most of the commentary people are like, well, they had to be fishermen because they couldn't go fishing unless they were actually fishermen.
That's not true.
I love the logic of people who interpret the Bible. Right, exactly. What about the people who just go, hey, we're going to go fishing. All right, we'll come along. I don't know how you do this, but we'll just watch. I mean, this is not easy. This is not with a pole rod and, reel. This is with nets. This is like real fishing. It's hard fishing. You have to drag those things in, especially, all right. Apparently, there are lots of historic records about fishing at night on the Sea of Galilee being the time to fish. So that part is true. But that's where the story goes a little awry, right? Because they caught nothing. And then Peter's like, well, I might as well just go out and sit on the boat like you do, right? It's noon. You're not going to catch anything. But it's like, whatever.
That's relaxation.
I knew it. It's exactly. So just go out on the boat. It doesn't matter if you catch anything. It's just like, you don't have to listen to Eileen. It's perfect. Perfect. Okay. You're sitting on the boat too? Okay.
Well, not really.
You're on the dock?
I go for a ride, maybe once a summer on the boat.
I appreciate that. It's really boring.
It's like too much.
Yeah, you're seasick and you're bored. I mean, it's the perfect combination. All right, so
You just stray straight if you don't go on a boat anymore.
I know I saw your picture. You sat on the dock, right?
I stay on the shore.
It's,
Here.
yeah, you could. I don't know. Yeah, okay. It's probably better. It's the same thing with the hunting where you sit in the back of the truck.
No, he doesn't even go.
You don't even do that anymore. Okay, that's all right. All right. So just as day was breaking, that's not the first time that's happened in the gospel. What happened as the rooster crowed? Peter denied him. Yeah. See, this is why I like Ethan's idea about this being an apostolic ministry, because you have a restoration of Peter happening here. Another one. He already did the peace be with you part, right back in chapter 20. But now he's restoring Peter in a similar way, right?
And that was started 15.
Uh-huh. So day was breaking. Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. I mean, they're 100 yards off, so that's, I don't know. Unless he didn't have his glowing halo on that day.
What, 300 feet?
I don't know. How many, 100 yards? How many feet is that?
Yours 3 feet.
Where's that here? What's the actual measure? It's probably stadia. 200 cubits. A cubit was about 18 inches or 45 centimeters. So a cubit is 1.5 feet, and it's 200 cubits, so that's 300 feet. Good job, Ethan. Is that what you said?
Well, it's just 1 times 3. The yard's 3 feet.
Is a yard 3 feet?
That's what I remember.
I only do metric because I'm not a heathen like the rest of you. So I know it's the only thing from the French Enlightenment that I actually agree with is the metric system. Their calendar was wrong. Yeah. Anyway, philosophy was wrong, but the metric system, perfect. Not everything. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. All right. Anyway. It's only because of when I make coffee, because weight and liquid measurement to water, of course, 1 gram is 1 milliliter of water, roughly, close enough, it makes ratioing easier between dry ingredients and wet ingredients. Same with baking and cooking, actually. It makes it a lot easier. If you're going to do ratios, like with bread, because you want a certain hydration, you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. It's in your book that I got, that I showed you. Brother, what's his name's book? Okay. We will go with you. They went out into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. Day was breaking. Jesus said to them, oh, that's nice. It's children. But remember, this is an important word. This is not kinder, like in Germany. This is paidion, paidos. This is the word for children who are students. Right. So he's speaking to them like a rabbi. This is important because the Bible has multiple words for children. They're usually all translated the same. But this is what, if you were in school, we get the word pedagogue from this. Pedagogy is the teaching of children. That's what it means. Right. So
he has used this term.
oh yeah. Oh, it's all over the place. Paideon, but it's a cool word. Do you have any fish? Why? Yeah, it's time for breakfast. That's right. They answered him, no. He said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. All right, so two problems here. One problem is now we're fishing when we don't catch anything. That's the big one. But then why the right side of the boat? Yeah.
Were they fishing on the left side of the boat before?
Well, we got Gus in here. What do you want to bet that fishermen are also a little superstitious about how they fish? Like what time and how they cast, or if they don't cast?
The biggest part is the secret you don't give away.
See? I knew it. So there's something about this right side. You agree? Instead of the left side, I don't know what it is. I mean, I looked here. I'm looking to see.
What about in Matthew with the sheep and the goats?
Okay. Here's what this Mr. Brown says, Catholic commentary guy. He's pretty critical, so he's good. An awkward phrase in Greek. This specification does not appear in the parallel Lucan story of the catch of fish. The right side was the auspicious side, the fortunate side. So to be on the right side is the side of fortune, he says. I don't know. According to Barrett, some other guy. Yet the writer certainly did not think of this as an instance of luck. Nor is Bernard's suggestion acceptable, whereby Jesus may have seen a shoal of... Okay, so here you go. Jesus saw a shoal of fish and was directing the disciples to it. Can you believe it? I'm telling you, if you really want to despair of the Christian church entirely, start reading books that are trying to critique the Bible. Jesus implies a more than natural knowledge, or John implies a more than natural knowledge on Jesus' part and corresponding moral duty to obey him exactly if one is his disciple, right? So it's that whole teacher-student thing. Now, how he knows, can he command the fish into the net? Of course he can. He's the God of heaven and earth. He created all things by his word. All right. So this is why people get hung up on the mechanics of it. It's the same thing with the Nile River turning to blood. That it had to have been red algae, or blood in the water from sharks or something, right?
This is when you try to explain mysteries.
It is trying to explain mystery. And it kind of just destroys the story, right? And you end up losing the point, getting caught up in it's like looking at missing the forest for the trees, right? Isn't that the expression? Okay.
I'm pretty sure if it said it turned to blood, it was probably the consistency of blood as well.
There's all sorts of, and then that story's messy, so let's not go there. All right, children, okay, right side of the boat, you find, they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. All right, the nets were breaking, just like the other story. The disciple whom Jesus loved, we talked about, that's John, said to Peter, it is the Lord. Simon Peter heard it, that it was the Lord. He put on his outer garment, for he was naked for work. So I could read you the pages and pages of commentary about him being naked for work. Seriously, I was laughing at it this morning. Naomi was up at 4:30, so I was like, well, what am I going to do? Might as well read a book. And this is the conclusion of Mr. Brown is he was wearing his work smock, but it's not suitable to be with Jesus. So you got to throw on your outer garment. I don't know. I guess guys take off their shirt when they're on the boat, but I would never do that because then you get sunburned. I don't know.
Well, it was night.
No, it's morning. Day was breaking. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, you got to put on the right. Anyway, you got to put on the right. Here's the thing. Okay, Ethan said this is the ministry. Here he's got to put on the right garment to be with the Lord. That may all be that's going on here, right? To be clothed with the robe of Christ's righteousness for work, right? He threw himself into the sea, which is made of water. Okay, we got all sorts of maybe churchy stuff going on here. And that's my suggestion, actually. The epilogue. There's two primary stories. We read one. We'll look at the other one maybe not this week. They're both about basically the life of the church. So Ethan said the office of the ministry, but of course the office of the ministry is about the disciples being appointed for the work of the church, right? So because we have him fishing, and we have him gathering in, and we have him gathering in through water, right? And we have him clothed for work, clothed to do Christ's work, right? And of course we have him being brought to the shore, and they dragged the fish. They were not far from land, but about 100 yards off. We said that was 300 feet. I don't know. You wouldn't recognize Jesus from 300 feet, would you? There's 300.
Well, not if it's early morning.
Not even early morning. Yeah, it's true. The sun and, the reflection off the water. Or we could just say they didn't recognize him because he didn't want to be known yet by them. Oh, we could just do that. Anyway, when they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire. We have not seen a charcoal fire before, have we? Remember? The rooster crowed. Was there charcoal fire there? Yeah, Peter was warming himself. But here, it already had fish laid out on it and bread. Didn't he just ask for fish? Aww, there's an inconsistency in the story. Anyway, fish and bread. When did we see fish and bread before?
Feeding the 5,000.
That's right. And who did the fish and bread go to? To the people, right? Again, work of the church. I think this is I'm not saying it's not a true story, but I am saying he's telling the story in such a way that he's kind of drawing together all sorts of. We have Nicodemus' story, we have Peter's denial, we've got the calling of the disciples back from chapter 1, with Philip and Nathaniel and Bartholomew or whatever their name is, Andrew, Peter, Simon Peter. What else I say they brought in? The 5,000. I think that kind of covers it, right? Anyway, so there's all sorts of kind of allusions back. And bread. Nice. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you've just caught, because obviously there's not enough this time compared to the feeding of the 5,000. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. Strange. Uh-huh. Well, you always count your fish. We caught however many perch, how many da-da-da. Yeah, see? Okay. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. All right? So, if this is a picture of the life of the church and the work of the fishermen of the church, that's the casting out of the net of the gospel to draw people into the church, there's a large catch, but yet the net is always capable of drawing them in. I've actually heard people say, well, we wouldn't want to get too big because then we wouldn't know what to do with it. They're like, I don't think don't complain. If the Lord draws people in, you accept them and you say, we'll figure that out when we get there. All right? It's the same way if you don't have a large catch and you're like, well, I don't know how we can do what we want to do without all the... Well, then don't do it. Do something different. Do what you can do, right? Don't get all hung up in the doing. Oh, sorry about the overlay there. All right, and then as we do on Easter Sunday, come and have breakfast, right? There's the institution of the Holy Sacrament of the Easter Sunday breakfast. That was a joke.
In those churches, yeah.
Yeah, it was always a youth group thing for us. The youth group would do it. So we could go to the youth gatherings. Because you make good money on Easter Sunday. People are very generous on Easter. All right. Let's talk about the fish. Because I've talked about this so many times and I've never taken the time to go and research everything. So Mr. Brown gives us a lot here. You ready for this? 153 fish. Okay, you want to hear all the speculation that's possible on this? Here we go. Although John frequently qualifies his numerals with about, like about 153. Not here. The more convenient about 150 is not employed here. The idea that the writer may have had a hidden symbolic purpose in citing the exact numeral 153 has led to an enormous amount of speculation. Quote, everything from gematria to geometrical progression. I don't know what gematria is. Gematria? Anybody know what that word means? Gematria. Should we do Google? I don't know about Google. All right, we'll take the risk. What's going to happen? Oh, it's from Hebrew. Is an alphanumeric code of assigning a numerical value to a name, word, or phrase based on its letters. Oh, yeah, that's right. They do this all the time with numerology. So like A is 1, B is 2, 3, da, da, da. It's secret code. Of course, the Bible's written in secret code. It doesn't want you to know what it actually is saying. A little sarcasm today, but yeah, just watch, what's that show called? Ancient Aliens? Yeah. Everything is a secret code. Nothing is what you think it is, which is kind of fatiguing after a while. Because you're like, well, then what am I supposed to believe? Oh, man, I lost my page. The second conclusion. No, let's not do that. Where's the fish? You know everything. Truly. Notes. Let's have breakfast. Feed my lambs. Sorry. I got distracted and I let it lose my page. Oh, no. I'm almost there. Let's eat breakfast. Large 153. Okay. All right. So some kind of special numerology or something, right? But nothing dispelling St. Augustine's contention that the number is, quote, a great mystery. All right. And then we got 2 more pages. You could just leave it with Augustine. It's a great mystery and move on. But no. For a survey, see Krauss' article cited. Let us mention some of the more significant theories. A, in his commentary on Ezekiel, it's Roman numerals, so hold on, 47, verses 6 to 12, St. Jerome tells us that the Greek zoologists had recorded 153 different kinds of fish. And so by mentioning this number, John may have been symbolizing the totality and range of the disciples' catch. They caught every fish possible. And symbolically anticipating that the Christian mission would bring in all men, or at least all types of men. All right, it's entirely speculation, but it's leading towards faith. We'll give Jerome some credit for that, right? Because that's true. That is the work of the church. Yeah, he'll gather all people to himself. All right, one could find a parallel in the parable of the kingdom in Matthew 13, verse 47, where the net thrown into the sea gathers fish of every kind. Nevertheless, Jerome's interpretation supposes that the Johannine writer would have known the conclusions of Greek zoologists. So John didn't read Greek zoologists? Of course not. He was a moron. Anyway, moreover, Jerome cites as his authority the most learned poet among the zoologists, Oppian of Cilicia, who you know quite well, right? From 180. And as R. Grant, in his document 1949, has shown, the form of Oppian's Halucia has reached us does not support Jerome's contention. So the thing that he cites doesn't even support him as being 153. At least not the copies we have. Oppian states that there are countless types of fish and actually lists 157. Oops. Isn't this incredible? I thought you'd love this stuff. Pliny, in his Natural History, book 9, knew of 104 varieties of fish and crustacea. Grant suspects that Jerome was interpreting Greek zoology by way of John. Okay, so that's the first option. I'm serious. This is fun. B, Augustine. We mentioned it. His commentary on John gives us the first instance of a mathematical approach to 153, wherein the number is seen as the sum of all numbers from 1 to 17. Is that true? If you add 1 to 17, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 3, 1 plus 4, you get 153. Is it a prime number, 153? That would make it a prime, wouldn't it? Maybe? Wherein the number is seen as the sum. Okay. The symbolism that one may find in 17 varies, and much of what is proposed by church writers is anachronistic for the gospel. 10 commandments and 7 gifts of the Spirit, 9 choirs of angels, 3 hummingbirds. How many French hens? No, 8 beatitudes. 10 commandments, 7 gifts of the Spirit, 9 choirs of angels, 8 beatitudes. Okay, whatever. Hoskins takes the idea in a different direction. 153 dots can be arranged in an equilateral triangle with 17 dots on each side. Somebody want to draw that for me? Equal-sided triangle with 17 dots on each side. Okay, got it? Triangular numbers were of interest both to Greek mathematicians and to biblical authors. And then he cites an article. Thus, one may theorize that 153 is a numerical symbol for perfection. A symbolism helped by the fact that 17, the basic constituent, is made up of 2 numbers symbolic of perfection, namely 7 and 10. Members important in contemporary Jewish thought. Barrett backs up this suggestion by pointing out that the total of 7 disciples were mentioned in verse 2, although the writer calls no attention to this total, and that the book of Revelation 7 is a symbolic number. The conclusion of all this would be that for John, the perfect number 153 anticipated the fullness of the church. Again, similar to Jerome, not bad. Entirely speculative, right? There's no biblical foundation for what he's saying, except for that little bit from Revelation. Ooh, an allegorical approach is proposed by Cyril of Alexandria in his commentary on John, who breaks the number down into 100 and 50 and 3. 100 represents the fullness of the Gentiles, 50 represents the remnant of Israel, 3 represents the Holy Trinity, because what else would it be? That's not what he wrote. For Rupert of Deutz, that's a cool name, the 100 represents the married, 50 represents the widows, and 3 represents the virgins. Why? I don't know. These allegories reflect the theological interests of a later period. So apparently Rupert was really concerned about married, widows, and virgins. For example, the Johannine writer scarcely thought of the Holy Trinity as such. That's true. Okay, gematria. Remember we talked about that. Aleph equals 1, Beit equals 2. Hebrew alphabet. Find some modern exponents. Cruzy stresses that 153 represents the sum of the numerical values of the letters of the Hebrew expression for the Church of Love. That'd be a great name for your church, except it seems like it belongs in Vegas or something, right? One cannot deny that gematria was known to the Johannine school of writers. For example, in Revelation 13, verse 18, 666, where, however, the reader's attention is called to the gematria, where he actually says, and that is the number of the beast, etc., etc. He actually explains how to do it. He gives you the code, right? Which then has caused no end of people speculating of all the codes in John's Revelation, right? But it is the sheerest speculation to base the gematria on an expression that never occurs in the Johannine writings. Again, there's no other biblical basis for it, so you're just speculating. And this is exciting, Leah. I can tell you're staying awake. Good. Whatever. Eisler ingeniously points out that the numerical value of Simon is 76, and that of ichthys, fish, is 77, which means 153. Look, of more interest is the gematria proposed by Emerton in 1958, based on the passage of Ezekiel, again, same Ezekiel 47, mentioned as subject of Jerome marks in theory A above. Namely, the description of the stream of water that flows from the temple toward the Jordan Valley, ultimately to the whole land of Palestine. This passage was known in Johannine circles, for it forms the background for Revelation 12, 1-2, the river of life flowing from the throne of the Lamb. We talked about this, right? That to some degree in John's Gospel, but definitely in John's Apocalypse, like Ezekiel, Daniel to some degree too, but Ezekiel is like the basis for the book. And nobody reads Ezekiel when they read Revelation. They don't read them side by side. They read Revelation as if Ezekiel never happened. Like, have you read Ezekiel? You think this stuff's wacky. Go back and read that, right? With the wheels on wheels and the fire and everything, right? Like, oh, I'm not reading literal writing here. I'm not reading even metaphorical writing. This is a different kind of literature, right? It's apocalyptic literature, which is a whole other genre. Okay, whatever. Oh, now in Ezekiel, we hear that after the stream has watered the land and is teeming with fish of every kind, again, Ezekiel 47, verse 10, fishermen will stand by the sea from En-Gedi to En-Galim, spreading their nets. Not bad, right? So we have water, the water of life, and coming from that are the fish. Ooh, I like it. Emerton observes that the numerical value, here we go, of the Hebrew consonants for En-Gedi is 17, and that of En-Galim is 153. Brilliant. Working with variant spellings of the Septuagint and Masoretic text, propose that the gematria based on the Greek names of En-Gedi and En-Galim can also yield a total value of 153. It works with both Hebrew and Greek. Mind blown. That was sarcasm. This was countered by Emerton, who objected that the two spellings of the names on the calculations were made were never from one Greek text manuscript. There's different manuscripts. They don't agree, blah, blah, blah. He remarks that in early Christian art, Peter and John, the two prominent disciples of John 21, were portrayed next to a stream of water flowing from the temple, which in turn may be connected with the rock of Jesus' sepulcher. All right, you want the summary? How many more pages is this? One cannot deny that some of these interpretations, though they are not mutually exclusive or possible, but they all encounter the same objection. We have no evidence that any such complicated understanding of 153 would have been intelligible to John's readers. We know of no speculation or established symbolism related to the number 153 in early thought. On the principle that where there is smoke, there is fire, or in this case, charcoal fire, we would concede to the above-mentioned interpretations the likelihood that the number was meant to symbolize the breadth or even the universality of the Christian mission. So basically, he just comes down and says, it's a big number, so it's a big church. It has lots of fish in it. That's kind of boring, but after all that, isn't this fun? You read pages and pages, and then it's just like, the simplest explanation is probably the right one. But we are inclined to think that because the symbolism is not immediately evident, it did not prompt the invention of the number, for certainly the writer, were he choosing freely, could have come up with a more obviously symbolic number. For example, 144, like he does in Revelation. Isn't this fun? The origin of the number probably lies in the direction of an emphasis on the authentic eyewitness character of what was recorded. Ooh, now that's helpful. He was there, he's born witness. What he says is true, that you may know that he's telling the truth. That was we'll see that in a few verses. The beloved disciples there. He counted them, just like Gus would. He count the fish, and he knew the number. I kind of like that interpretation. He was seemingly the one who transmitted the fact that blood and water flowed from the side of Jesus. Back in chapter 20, he was the source for the exact description of the position of the burial wrappings. Right? So here, perhaps we are to think of his reporting the exact number of fish that the disciples caught. Maybe he was just there. That he counted them. Isn't this fun? I keep saying that. I don't know if it is. The number would have been retained in the story because it was so large. When the account received a symbolic interpretation, the number would have been interpreted as a figurative indication of the magnitude of the results of Jesus' mission. All right. And for instance, like the number of gallons of the water at the wine of Cana, the 144,000 in the book of Revelation. You can figure it out, but it's really just a big number. How was that? Now, I spent years mocking that text and never actually reading somebody actually go through the whole thing. So now we know. Jerome. All right. Let's see. What did we not cover? I think we covered most of it. This is the third time, right? When were the first two times that he revealed himself? Yeah, on Easter Sunday, right? Evening. And then a week later, right? Back in chapter 20. Now this is the third time. And it's kind of a fun story because, like Ethan said, I think it's a picture of the ministry. It's a picture of the church, right? They're gathering people in. The disciples are going about their work, right? Already here, metaphorically, I would say, right? Because it's not yet Pentecost. There's no Pentecost in John's gospel. Maybe this is kind of like a picture of what the church is like after Pentecost. They go labor all night. They don't catch anything. Then they're like, what did the Lord say? Oh, yeah, let's do that again. Right? Because this happens in the church all the time. We lose sight of what the Lord instructs us to do, and then we do our own thing. And then we get up in the morning, and we're kind of, why isn't anything working? Oh, yeah, we forgot. We're just do what Jesus told us to do. Don't get hung up. So there's all sorts of pictures of the church here. I think that's really beautiful. Don't you? All right, good. So then we have one more text that we didn't cover, so we'll do that next time. Starting in verse 15. That one's a little bit longer, so yeah, that'll be good for next time. It's much more apostolic, churchy, yeah, in the next. And one might actually say, we'll just anticipate it a little bit, that starting with verse 15, that the rest of it is actually interpretation of what we just read. So 15 through 24, or whatever it is, the end of the chapter, is an interpretation of the first half of the chapter. So we'll see if that bears out next time. But wait, there's more. All right, let's close with a prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you have given us your Son, Jesus, who comes and feeds us with his word and with his body and blood. to nourish us and strengthen us in the faith, that we would believe, and that by believing in him, we would have life in his name. May you continue to grant this among us, all through your Son, by your Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, good. Jim.